Hello everyone. How are you? It is September 27th, 2022. We are about a week into the fall. How is it the fall already? I had a wonderful weekend at Knit City, so thank you so much for understanding about skipping a week for the live stream. So normally we would have had a stream last week. This is the fourth Tuesday of the month, and we stream on the 1st and the 3rd. And I put a message out to the Slack community last week, and I was like, what do you guys think about waiting a week? Because I have Knit City coming up, and that makes a lot more sense. And everybody was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we're kind of streaming a week late, and then we'll be back on our schedule next week. So we have another live stream next week. Hopefully I'll have some fun things to talk about, because it's only a week. Sometimes it's a bit tight. But if we don't get to everything today, we'll just kind of shift it to next week. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being in the live stream and for participating and all that kind of stuff. We have a very full show today because I have lots to share with you. So I just want to say welcome to those who are new to the show. You're just checking us out for the first time. Thank you so much for being here. For those who are returning viewers and have been here time and time again, week after week, watching the show, I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for continuing to watch. I hope there's something here that you enjoy, that you like. And for our Patreon community, you guys are the ones that keep the lights on. You keep things rolling here month after month. You're the reason that I was able to bring on Rebecca. So thank you so much for your continued support of the work that we do here. And I can honestly now say we do here. So it's so good to see everybody. And chat is already going crazy. You guys are moving more quickly than I can keep up with, but that's totally fine. So it's good to see you guys. There's Ruth and Charlotte. Rebecca, of course, is here. Suzanne. Kathy is here. Dagmar. Lisa. Elizabeth. Julie, Florence, Diane. I'm not going to get to everybody. Eve is here. Brittany. It's so good to see everybody. So thank you so much for being here. I hope that everybody is knitting a ton and working on lots and lots of stuff. For those who are new to the show and are just checking it out, the main thing that we talk about here is spinning and hand spinning and using your hand spun. So for those who are sort of new and just checking out the show, if you're interested in working with your hand spun, you're learning how to spin, you're figuring out how it all works, how your wheel works, maybe you're getting on your spindles and you're learning how to spindle spin, this would be the place to do it. I hope that my sound is going to people are saying the sound's working, but then Eve was wondering about the sound. I suspect the hollow sound, Diane, is that the new room. It's really echoey. So Mike and I are in the process of, we're going to put something on this back wall, like some sort of a quilt, or I would love to say that I was going to weave a thing and I would hanging it up there and it would help with the sound not being so echoey. One day we will get there. So, but yeah, we'll put something on the back wall because we've got a rug on the floor, but it's not enough to absorb the sound and it's echoey. All right, I have a massive pile of things that we get to talk about today that is sitting here, and I also have a finished woven in ends sweater back here to talk to you about. I have not washed and blocked it. It is 30 degrees Celsius outside right now, so I am hoping that as soon as the live stream is done, before I pick up the kids, I am actually going to wash it and block it. I'll leave it drying, and hopefully it will be ready to go. And I'll be able, maybe I'll be wearing it next week. That would be incredible. So so I don't know if you guys know this, but my mom is an unbelievable quilter. She is like incredible, incroyable. So she, I actually was talking to her about maybe doing a piece for the back wall, which would be really cool. So I know, right, Diane? She says, right, yeah, get right on that weaving, Rachel. I know, right? I need to like add one more thing. That would be the right thing to do. That would be the right choice in this situation. Zan, thank you for saying that. It doesn't sound echoey. That's wonderful. So as you can see, I've got a bit of a pile here. I wanted to share a little bit about Knit City before we kind of get into some of the stuff. Knit City was incredible. It was lovely to see it kind of back to like full force. Fiona and Amanda they always do such an incredible job. And when you see them, they look right at you, they talk to you, they remember people. They are just two incredible humans. And I had a really great time just, quickly catching up with them, and not a ton of time, but I chatted with them a few times, and they seemed really energized, and they seemed to be really having a great weekend. And I know they're probably just, resting up this week because it's, a crazy weekend for them, but they are just awesome. So if you guys don't know who Knit Social is, knitsocial.ca, I want to say, they're the ones that put on Knit City here in Vancouver, which is the original Knit City, and now there's also Knit City Montreal. So they're just really amazing people. I was able to go to Stephanie Pearl McPhee's keynote on Friday night, and the topic was So You Knit a Pandemic. It was very topical. She joked around that choosing that as the topic was like, after she pitched it, she was like, what was I thinking? Because it was part of, the world that sort of the pandemic was like 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the rest of us had, 300 plus day lockdowns. So, very different depending on where in the world you were. And it was really neat to hear the stories of the people that had written to her and participated in her kind of call for, what did you do as a knitter during the pandemic and what happened? And she talked about these different groups of people and how they coped. And, it was poignant. It was kind. She really, she was very unbiased, and really played neutral. It was really good. There was a couple of stories where I almost felt like I had to get up and walk out, not because of what was being talked about. It was because they were my stories. They were ones from nurses, and they were stories that I could have written it. And it was just a couple of times where I was like, okay, like, just sort of a little bit like, oh, and it just, it comes all rushing back, right? You guys, many of us walked that together because you guys were home as well. And we, we're together. We were talking on Zoom. We were doing all these things together, and really, amazing to sort of walk that, together as a community. And then to hear it, from her in this keynote, it was really poignant. And then I love Kelly says the baby is staring at you with rapt attention. That's awesome. It's good to see you, Vicky, as well. She's just popped in. So that was Friday night, and then Saturday morning soccer. I had to be at the soccer field. That was awesome. Both kids played incredibly. James got a hat trick. And then Sunday afternoon I headed back, and I just hung out in the marketplace, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And then in the evening, I went to the knit night, and that's hosted by the grocery girls, Jody and Tracy. I did actually win some yarn, and I forgot to bring it to show you, but that was really fun. Europa was there. She's a drag queen that does these unbelievable wigs. Glenda, me, and Kelly just laughed the whole time. It was pretty spectacular. And I actually got a chance to talk to Stephanie for quite a long time. So her and I actually stood off to the side and chatted and talked about her experience living in Toronto of everything, and that was really amazing. And then Sunday we were demoing in the lounge. So in the middle of the Peony Forum, there was Sweet Georgia Yarns had set up looms and wheels and chairs and places for people to sit. And me and Kim McKenna and Diana Twiss and Katrina Stewart of Crafty Jacks, the four of us kind of hung out in that area together. Katrina had to keep going back and forth between the booth because it was obviously really busy. And for her, it's a working weekend. It's not a weekend necessarily to visit a ton. And it was good to see things busy and people purchasing and stuff. So she was back and forth, but we were sitting and spinning and chatting with people. It was really wonderful. And then in the afternoon, I actually took, for the first time, I took a workshop, which was really cool. So it was by Anna Hunter. I'm a huge fan of Long Way Homestead. And if you want to know more about what she's doing, go to canadianwool.org. A lot of what she's doing and a lot of the conversations that she's trying to have in Canada are pertinent to the United States as well. And what does it look like to rebuild a wool industry and have those conversations. And so I'd highly recommend checking that out. She has these postcards that are this one's for British Columbia. to send to the government, encouraging them to fund and invest development of medium and large wool processing facilities, support and fund existing processors to grow their wool processing operations, and fund innovative and develop new products. And then this is the federal one. So this is the one to send to federal government. And this is to fund and invest development of processing facilities. It's all the same stuff. But the big thing with the federal one is to change wool into an agricultural commodity. So right now, if you're a farmer and you fill out all your stuff for the government, you can say, like, there on the list is like sheep, so all of this is for meat, right? So sheep, pigs, chickens, blah, 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 but wool is not on there. And so she's campaigning for wool to be added. The other thing, so going to that workshop with her, it was the history of wool production in Canada. I've also been to a workshop and a discussion that was around, I am too, Kelly, I'm so excited for her book. I've also been to another talk that was about the history of flax production in Canada, which was done by my friend Rebecca Lampard in Ontario. And it was interesting because you could have put the two talks together and done one after the other. There were so many parallels. And one of the things that Rebecca talked about in her talk about flax was the lack of record keeping and accurate date keeping. And same with Anna, lack of records, lack of accurate date keeping, and lack of transparency, just not being able to get access to stuff because it either doesn't exist or it's gone. So preservation and all that kind of stuff of these records, and where do we go from here? So really, really interesting, really, really cool weekend. I felt really energized coming out of it, and I felt ready to sort of approach what I have to work with and my stash and all that kind of stuff again, because I was starting to feel really overwhelmed and like, oh my goodness, I can't do anymore. So it was wonderful. If anybody has any questions or anything, I was gonna prepare it, I was gonna take lots of photos, do some video, have a thing, do a thing. None of it happened. So, So I have something that I'm swatching for. Correction, I have two things that I'm swatching for. I have a thing that I cast on, and I have a thing that I cast off. So let's talk about yarn when we get back from running the intro. Welcome back, everyone. So I think what we'll do is we'll talk about my sweater first, mostly because that is what's in the title slide for the show, so that people who are looking for my reflections on that will be able to find them relatively quickly. So let me just go to the main screen here and let me grab my dress form. I had all sorts of like crazy ideas over the weekend, like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make this, and I'm going to do this. And I actually started a couple of things, which is really cool. So one of the things is going to get ripped out, but I'll tell you why. And it just made me feel like, okay, I can actually get this stuff started and like get it going. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this sweater pattern and maybe haven't seen it before or haven't seen it yet, this is Metamorphic by Andrea Mowry. It is linked in the show notes at patreon.com/WnS, and if somebody wants to throw a link into the chat, that would be great. So this is, it's not a sweater that's written for hand spun. Like, it's not like she tells you, use your hand spun, this is how you spin it, blah, blah, blah. That's not the purpose of the pattern. However, And I think in the pattern she uses, the contrast color is Spin Cycle. I really should have that information at the tip of my fingers, but you know. But it gives, it opens the door for using hand spun. And of course, Andrea has just been, over the last couple of years, learning how to spin. She's been using her hand spun more and more. She's been encouraging people to use hand spun, and she's been doing some spackles, which is spin and knit, and spin along, knit along. That's what that stands for. And so a lot of her patterns, I've really noticed over probably the last year, that there are more and more patterns that are really, you could throw your hand spun in and it would look like the pattern was written for hand spun. And part of it is the Spin Cycle yarn. It's designed to look like hand spun and to mimic hand spun and spinning from like a braid. And how they do that is with very slow transitions of color, and it gives you that nice barber poling. And we've talked about this lots on the podcast. And the yarn is sort of has that look and feel that a lot of people who don't necessarily want to learn how to spin and don't want to spin, it gives them that look that they're looking for, you know, that barber pulling, that change in color, and that variegation of slow movement of stripes, all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I've sort of gravitated towards some of Andrea's patterns over the last few years. Shifty, this one, Stone Crop, I think those are the three big ones, unless somebody can think of any other ones that I've made. That it just is, it's easy. It's an easy sub. And so I happen to have a lot of this yarn that I had spun when Rebecca was here. Actually, I started working on it when Rebecca was here. And this is West Coast Color, 100% Falkland. So I had 3 skeins of it, and I used less than 1 skein. So I'll talk about the yardage and sort of what happened in a minute. But that yarn, I felt, was a really good substitute for the contrast color. So I'll just talk about the construction for just a minute before we get into sort of the yarns themselves. You actually knit this sweater on the wrong side, and I can see that if you're a newer knitter, that would really throw you off, because you would be starting your short rows and all of the work back here to build up the back collar, and then starting to knit here. And if you don't really read the pattern, you won't realize that what you're actually doing is knitting on the wrong side. So you're knitting stripe after stripe, but you're knitting the whole time, and then it's the reverse stockinette side that you're actually wearing outward to the world. That's the side that you're actually showing everyone. So that actually makes the knitting really super fast. And then the other thing that makes it really fast is the fact that it's like potato chip knitting. You can't just knit one stripe. So you knit your color, and then you're like, oh, I've only got one more stripe to do. I'm gonna knit the next one. And oh, I have that one done. I'm gonna knit the next one. Let's see what happens with the color next. And so it just gets you, it keeps that momentum going. Because when I got to the separation of the yoke and the sleeves from the body, I was like, oh, sweet mother of pearl, this is gonna take forever. This body is gonna take eons to knit. Well, it took like 2 nights, 3 nights. It was very, very, very fast. I did lengthen it by 1 inch. So I think that in the pattern it's 10 inches, and I think I lengthened it to 11. I added 1 inch of knitting. I had more than enough yarn to lengthen it even more. I may still, we'll see. I could rip all of this out and lengthen it a bit more and then put the ribbing on. I feel like then it will get too long. But this sort of style of semi-cropped is still really, really popular. And I actually quite like the aesthetic when you see it like out and about in the world. For me, with high-waisted jeans, it actually is very flattering for me because it makes my legs look longer. So, and I have very short legs, so that is something. And then the other thing that you're doing every round is you're slipping a stitch. So what you end up with is on the sleeves, you end up with this slip stitch all the way down, same on the front, and of course, same on the back. And what I really like about this is it hides where you're switching your colors. So it makes it look like there's no interruption in the color, which is really nice. The other difference with this pattern is you're doing your short row shaping in the collar. So before you stop your 2x2 rib, you actually are working your short rows to lift the back of the neck up, which I'd never done before. And I thought, oh, that's gonna make this collar look really weird. It doesn't at all. It suits it 110%, like it just works. So that came together very quickly. It was a very, very fast knit. And I'm obviously incredibly happy with how it came out. I have not washed it. It is not blocked. This is fresh off the needles, ends woven in this morning during virtual spin group. Thank you so much, Greta. It looks beautiful, Rachel. Love your new sweater. Thank you. Oh, and Greta, it was so good to see you this weekend so much. Lisa says it is gorgeous. I have to keep my eyes away from Rachel's mouth because it is always out of sync. Yeah, sorry, Florence. I need to find more high-waisted jeans. I know high-waisted jeans are amazing. So yardage. Let's talk about the yarn, because the yarn that I used for this, I was shocked at how little yarn I used. So let me just go over here for a moment. Did I have it? Okay, so these are the yarns. So I started out with 3 skeins of the 2 yarns. Both of them, I'm just gonna pull up the stats for you guys. So this is where working with our handspun can be a little bit deceiving, and it can really be, you know, you think you've got all this yardage, you think that you're good to go, you're, you know, set up, and you've spun all this yarn, and then you use like a third of it. So what ended up happening for the gray, this is the Baby Doll Southdown blended with Tussa silk. And I don't know if you can see in the photo here, but there is like that, there's some white Tussa that didn't blend in. I talked about it last show, like there's a little bit of like heathering and stuff in it. It looks like tweed almost. I ended up using just shy of 2 of the 3 skeins of this yarn. It does mean that I have enough to play around with. I could definitely have this as a cowl or something right next to my skin. So, oh, Julie, thank you. You're amazing. She says, can you give us a tutorial on cutting bangs? Yours are perfect. Thank you. I'll tell you how I do them in a minute. So, with this yarn, I spun a total, it was 200 grams in total that I had, and I spun a total of 962 yards. And it was 170 grams when all was said and done, when all was finished. I'm not sure how I ended up starting out with 200 grams and I ended with 170, but them's the breaks. So I had 962 yards of this. It was spun as a 2-ply, very light, very airy. I spun it long draw, lots and lots of air was left in it. I didn't put tons and tons and tons of twist in my yarn. The twist angle is sort of about 40 degrees-ish, but because of the Baby Doll Southdown, it has almost like sort of a chalky appearance where it just, you can't really see the individual singles anymore, and it kind of ends up just blending together and looking, I always think of the downs and the down-like wools as looking a bit chalky. And it ends up coming out very, very light, so very, very high grist. So the grist on this yarn was 2,500 yards per pound, 2,500 yards per pound. And what I ended up using, and remember, there's 2 colors in this. So the body of the sweater, most of the yoke and the sleeves, you're evenly using the 2 colors. So it's not like yes, you're using a little bit more of the gray of the main color, but the rest of the sweater is equal between the 2. So if a sweater is about 1,000 yards, you're gonna use about 500 yards of your main color. So sure enough, I used 566 yards of the Small Bird Workshop, the gray. And then for the Falkland, this is West Coast color. I had a lot of this. I had a total of 200 grams, but I had spun 1,100 yards, so 1,100 yards of yarn. So very similar in grist. The grist of this one was 2,500 yards as well, 2,500 yards per pound. So they were basically the same. Both of these yarns were 2,500 yards per pound, and they were both a roughly like sport weight kind of weight. So in the end, I actually used 400 yards of the Falkland, which is why I have so much left, because each skein was about 400 yards. I think one of them was 300 and the other two were over 400. So very, very light, very bouncy, springy, springy. Glenda commented quite a few times on how light it is. The thing is what I'm hoping, and this was a 2-ply as well, and it was spun continuous back, so that's where I'm draft, smooth, draft, smooth, draft, smooth, and then on. But when I'm smoothing, I'm not squeezing all the air out and compressing it particularly. My fingers are really just moving down to the next point where we draft again from. Pinch, draft, but I'm not smoothing out all of that air or compressing it out at all. I'm not squeezing it. I've talked about that a lot in the Wool Circle, which is the live stream that's bi-monthly on Mondays that Rebecca now hosts. Yeah, so it's so funny. Rebecca just said you could make another sweater for Nora, but in the opposite colors. I actually was thinking about it. I totally could. Yeah. Freakishly light yarn for sport weight. Yes, lots and lots of air. That's the trick. But what I am looking forward to reflecting upon and reporting back to you guys is how this wears. I want it like, oh, and the elasticity on this thing is unbelievable. Everybody kept asking me, and I was finishing it up this morning. In the school playground because I literally had 3 rows to go, and they were all like, oh, is that a sweater for Nora? Like, guys, wool, it grows, it's stretchy, it's elastic, look at how big this is. So and as soon as I threw it on my dress form, I was like, oh yeah, that's gonna be perfect. And I have since tried it on and it is good. So yeah, a cardigan would be a great idea. The thing is, Nora gets really hot, so every sweater that I've ever made for her, she never wears. So maybe if we lived in like more of a wintry place. So it'll be really interesting to see how it wears and whether or not it pills really badly. So I will report back because I am excited to wear this lots and lots and lots. So I'll just move this back so that she's not crowding me out. Thank you for listening to me wax poetic about her. All right, so what I would like to talk to you guys about a little bit is some of the stuff that I got at Knit City, and I don't normally talk about stash acquisition particularly, but I did think that this was a great opportunity to be able to sort of project plan a little bit with you guys because I've already cast a couple of things on. So this is from the Crafty Jackalope, which is Amanda Kafka, and this is just a completely ridiculous yarn. It's got sequins, it's sparkly. I bought some similar stuff last year and I did Nora a toque and she still wears it. She still loves it. I always get tons of comments about it in the playground at school. And when I saw it, I thought, what a perfect yarn to go with this stuff that I made years ago that I was quite disappointed with. Let me just focus the camera here. And actually, I feel like, did I put, so these are the yarns that I bought. So let me just show you these ones because then I'm not trying to like, get stuff to focus and focusing in on stuff. So I bought a skein, I bought a ball of brown and I bought a ball of white. And these are just Ella Ray. They're called Galaxy. So funny. Such a silly name, Galaxy. They have tons of sequins. They're absolutely ridiculous. They are 355 yards for 25 grams. Amanda had them in her booth. People were snapping them up. They're just like, it's just complete, self-gratuitousness. Like, it's just so much fun. Last year I bought sparkle yarn and I made that toque for Nora. And what I thought I would do is there were yarns that I spun back, I'm trying to remember when I did this one. I might actually look it up. So this one was a combo spin. It was 3 Waters Farm and an unlabeled skein of, I think it was Falkland that I had. I don't remember what my yardage was. I have 3 skeins of this and I absolutely cannot find the third one. I can only find 2. They were roughly, I don't know what my yardage was, but it's approximately 11 wraps per inch DK. And I had swatched for it at the time, kind of hoping that I would figure out something that I could do with it. I was really excited about it. And then I kind of just ran out of steam because I was really disappointed that it wasn't that I hadn't spun it a bit finer. The yarn is quite dense for me. And I wasn't sure how it would wear, and I certainly didn't really want it as a sweater. So there was this great cowl pattern that Felicia did quite a few years ago called the 5x5. And basically it was a 5-stitch repeat, like a ribbing repeat, with 5 different yarns. And she just put them all together and sort of, you know, knit like the wind, and ended up with this infinity cowl that you doubled around your neck. And it was sort of a way to like stash bust some of these yarns that you've got that are really fun, but you don't really know what to do with. So I saw these two and I thought, I've got a bunch of skeins in my stash that I could totally knit up a whole bunch of 5x5s, and I would be totally happy to just knit through that yarn. So one of those skeins of yarns that I was hoping to use up, besides these ones, was this superwash Targhee that I had got from Kinfolk years ago. And I remember talking about this yarn on the podcast because I was so disappointed by it, because I rushed and I didn't take my time, and I spun really quickly, and I didn't pre-draft, I just spun. It was really bulky. It made a really dense yarn. In the end, I'll just pull it up. I did the grist and the yardage and everything this morning. In the end, I ended up with, let me just find it here. Sorry, you guys. Here it is. I ended up with 131 grams, 260 yards for a grist of 890 yards per pound. So 890 yards in 1 pound would be what this spun up as, and it's quite bulky. But I just thought, you know, and it's also quite brown, so like that actually goes quite well together. And so I went through my stash and I found some Malabrigo. It's brown. I don't know what it's called, chocolate, I think. And I threw that in there, and then I thought I would just give it a try. I have this other sparkle sequin yarn that is like gold, and I thought, well, I'll just throw that in there and just see how it goes. And the pattern calls for 7mm needles, which I don't have, surprise, surprise. And I thought that I would instead try the 8mm since I'm using a lot of yarn, and the Superwash Targhee is actually quite bulky. So this is what it's looking like thus far. Unfortunately, the camera is not doing it justice at all. I'm not particularly keen on that bright cream. I think it's a little bit too, it just jumps out at you a bit too much. And the other thing that I sort of thought was, once I got started on it, and I was holding it at a distance and sort of holding it away from myself, I actually think it would look really lovely with brown or like a deep purple, like browny, plummy purple mohair. That would work really well. It would just make everything a little bit fuzzy. And I remember when I spun this yarn, I remember showing it to you guys, and I put it around as like I was wearing the yarn as a cowl because I was disappointed with it. And I was like, I guess I could just wear it as a cowl. Anyways, it's been stashed ever since. Same with this yarn. It's been stashed ever since. And it's sort of like, hey, how do we approach these yarns that we spin that we're not as keen on? Rebecca says that's quite a party on the needles. Is it ever? And the pattern's called 5x5, like BY, 5x5. That's the name of the pattern. I sort of got thinking to myself, like if I with this yarn here, knitting up a whole bunch of 5x5s. I know it's boring knitting, but I'm often waiting places where I can't sit and like check a pattern. I need to just be able to knit. And I don't have to keep them. I can sell them at our artisan sale because it's hand spun. So it's not like this is stuff that I have to keep. And with the sparkles, it's just like what, who just said them? Yeah, Eve says, sparkles are life. Yes, they are. They're so much fun, and they're just, you know, and as soon as you have sparkles, people pick it up, they look at it. I'm keeping this one for sure, but these ones, you know, if I could make 2 or 3 and use this crazy, crazy yarn and put some purple mohair in there with it, now you've got like this really fun Christmas gift for someone, right? And I can throw it in the artisan sale because like it's hand spun. So I don't know if I'll get them done for this year. Our artisan sale is in about a month, and jurying is only in a couple of weeks, and I just don't see myself being able to get them finished. But I thought what a fun thing to do sort of over the next little while when I need a project on the needles at all times that is mindless, simple, that I don't have to pay attention, and big needles are life. It goes so fast with big needles. So yeah, super fun. And you know, if you aren't going to use the yarn and the yarn is going to sit in your stash, then maybe, just maybe, it's worthwhile to put it with a whole bunch of other stuff. And maybe the hand spun isn't quite so much the front and center anymore. Like maybe it takes a bit of a back seat, but on the other hand, it's being used and it can give life to something, you know, whether it's a winter outfit or keeping your neck cozy or giving it to a friend or whatever that looks like. So really, really fun. So that was that stuff. All right, let's see what else we have to talk about. There's lots of things to talk about. Little twinkles through the fuzz. Yes. I will be watching to see if the bulk makes it stiff. Yes. I think I would need those larger needles so it wouldn't be armor. Absolutely. Don't let Diana see purple and sparkles or her thing. Maybe I'll be sending you a purple 5x5, Rebecca. So that's the 5x5. And then I have not photographed it yet because I was really unhappy with my farmhouse cardigan. So I had talked about it on the podcast and then it kind of went by the wayside. I did finish it. All the ends are woven in. I have worn it. There are buttons on it. I just never photographed it. The reason was the buttons just felt really heavy and it feels like such a rustic sweater. And the neck is, it does slide down a little bit. That is a little bit annoying, but it's so cozy and it's so warm and you just want to like cuddle up in it. So thank you, Kelly, for the pattern recommendation. At the show in the Longway Homestead booth, they had leather buttons and I'm not a huge fan of leather, but I thought what a perfect button for this cardigan. So that was one of the things that I bought and I will sew them on over the next week or so and I'll get some finished photos. And those were the buttons that I got. The other thing that I bought was some stitch markers. I never buy stitch markers, but these ones are from K-Zip Knits. And they had them out in like little dishes. I'll talk about these ones in just a sec. But they had them out in little dishes and you could pick 2 for, it was like 2 for $7, 3 for $10, or 5 for $15 or something like that. Anyways, these are stocking stuffers for Nora. So her favorite animal is owls. So I got her an owl and then I thought the 2 unicorns were so cute. And the guy who was selling them, he's like, so if these are for your daughter, like, is she actually going to use them as stitch markers? And I said, yeah, like she knits. So he was really happy about that. And then they give you a little ring pin to hold them on to keep them organized. So I've put those away for Christmas. And then these ones are actually from Longway Homestead as well. And so the other ones that just cycled through have the little toadstool and then have the little bee. And I usually don't buy stitch markers. I just don't bother. But I saw these and I really liked them and I thought, perfect. So I did get a couple of things for myself, which was really fun. Greta says, I love K-Zip Knits. She had lovely stuff at her booth. Absolutely. Those unicorns, so cute. Still one of my most worn cardigans. That's so crazy. Even it was great while pregnant. Yeah, Kelly, I knew it was one of your favorites. I've already worn it a ton, which is saying something. Like before when it was still quite cool in the springs, we had such a terrible spring. I did wear it quite a few times. So yeah, I did get one more thing. And I thought I had a photo of it and that I had loaded it, but maybe I didn't. what I bought, let me just do it really quickly. What I actually bought was enough fiber for my coat. So I've talked about my coat before. My coat, the coat, is what I would like to do is knit it based on my yarns. These are I used Briggs & Little Sport for my Unit 1 with the Ontario Hand Weavers and Spinners Master Weaver. And this is a singles yarn. It's labeled as a 1-ply, but it's actually, you know, with singles. If we're going to call it properly, it's a singles. And because I know this yarn so well, I thought, oh, I'll just buy this yarn in the color that I want. I'll weave the fabric for the coat and I'll sew said coat. But the more I thought about it, the more I really wanted it to be hand spun, hand woven. And so at the show, I thought, well, if I can keep my eyes open for something and I find something, this, you know, then that'll be the coat. So this is Lynn from West Coast Color. This is her toothy base. It's carded at a local to me mill. It's a mill here in BC. She's located in Kamloops. And this is, they call it the toothy base because it's sort of more like what many of us would call a medium wool. It is absolutely still next to the skin. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not, you know, Polworth and Merino and all that kind of stuff, Targhee. Diana Twist did a sweater out of this fiber. It was gorgeous. If you haven't heard of Diana Twist, you don't know who I'm talking about, go to 100milewear.com. And she's a beautiful spindle spinner, especially support spindles. And, and spindles themselves too, but she's been delving into support spindles and it's been incredibly inspiring. Anyways, this fiber is probably Perendale, but it's also probably got some other stuff in it as well. And so they just label it as toothy because it's probably got some crossbreed in it. And it's got some Perendale. It's probably got some other stuff. It works beautifully for just about anything that you would want to spin and make. So I'll do some sampling. I'll talk about it on the show and I'll keep you guys posted about sort of what comes. But what I'm hoping is that I can spin a yarn that's a 2-ply that's similar to this, but not a singles. And I think that that'll work really well for a twill fabric for the coat. So that's long-term sort of the plan. And then the last thing, I'll just go to the main camera. The last thing that I bought over the weekend was something that I had seen last year that I was actually dreaming about and had actually contacted the farm. They're 20 minutes from me up the road. We drive past them every time I go out there and take the kids for tutoring. Kensington Prairie Farm, and they do alpaca. Lovely people. Catherine's a lovely person. Anyways, I had seen this as Knit City was closing and finishing up last year, but I didn't have the confidence as a weaver at the time to feel like I could buy it and purchase it and that it wouldn't just sit in my stash. And let's face it, we buy all this stuff, but then it does sit in our stash because we've got other stuff that we're working on. But I felt like this year, if they still had it, that I had the confidence and could purchase it. So this is a cone. It is 3,000 yards of yarn, 3,900, it is, 1,000 grams. So it's a lot of yarn. I'm not going to try to do math on the podcast. It's about 3,000 yards. I think it's actually more than that if I do the math properly. It's 800 meters. So it's 800 meters per 100 grams, and this is 1,000 grams. So move your decimals over. It's 8,000 yards of yarn, meters of yarn. Sorry. And this is 100% baby alpaca. It's taupe. It is undyed. It is a natural color, and it's the equivalent of 216 or 16.2. So this is going to be a piece of fabric. The threading will probably take forever because it'll be, so many ends, but I'll work on it over the course of part of a year. And it'll probably be plain weave or some variant of that, so that I have a big enough piece of hand woven fabric that I could actually make a sweater. So that is my plan. Super, super excited. Yeah, 1.1 pounds. So yeah, if it's 4,000 yards per pound, then it's going to be just over 8,000 yards. Yeah, so super exciting. Okay, and then the last thing, and I'll put the product camera back and then we'll get into community participation. I don't know if anybody remembers this yarn. This is Massom Singles. I had spun this as part of our singles study quite a few years ago. We explored singles, we explored, oh, good night, Becca. We did the whole thing, deep dive. We've done spinning singles several times, and I really fell down the rabbit hole and I spun a lot of singles, like back to back to back to back, demoed it, talked about it, helped you guys to navigate all of that. If you go on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rachel Smith, capital R, capital S, and search singles, a whole bunch of stuff will come up. Anyhow, this yarn is one of my favorite yarns that I've ever spun, which might surprise you because it's very simple, it's very plain, but it's one of my favorites. And when I went to say goodbye to Brittany of Crux Fibers, and Brittany has been on Woolen Spinning Radio. She is located in Whitehorse, Yukon. Me and Glenda, Kelly, and Brittany had dinner together on Saturday night. It was lovely to sit and chit chat. And Brittany, being the amazing human being that she is, gifted me 2 cakes of this unspun. Isn't this huge? It's bigger than my head. It's huge. Like, look, it's huge. It's 200 grams of unspun singles. So what makes this really cool is that, and this is from a mill in Canada, it's not 100% Canadian wool. There is some wool from New England in here, which is kind of neat. So it's just like a sort of a blend of stuff from the wool pool. And some of it's from New England, some of it's from, and then some of it's from Eastern Canada, and it's from a mill in Eastern Canada. And I'm just trying to find the end. So it's unspun. So this is what it looks like before they go to spin it. So as it's being spun, it then is drafted and then it's spun. Okay, so what people have been doing with this stuff is they have been knitting with it. Because, you know, you can. So, sorry the camera's not focusing. So she gave me 2 cakes of it. She let me pick the color, and she said, like, give it a try, see what you think, and like, I'd love some feedback. She's knit a couple of toques out of it, which are beautiful. And so I came home that night, and the kids really wanted to watch a movie. I'd been gone all weekend, blah, blah, blah. We decided to do something quiet. And I was really curious about what this would be like to knit. So I knit it up, and this is the gauge swatch. And it's really, really interesting to work with. I think I might just put this on the bigger camera. Did I tell you guys that James was playing around with the settings on my other camera? He was playing around with them, and now, like, the focus and everything is all messed up, and Mike's gonna fix it. It's just that he hasn't had a chance. So anyhow, so this is way better because it actually focuses quickly. So this is the singles. So this is knit on 3.75 millimeter needles. 4 millimeter needles was too loose and 3.5 was too tight. So I ended up with 3.75. And I think you could actually go down to 3.5 millimeter needles, but it would be quite dense and quite tight. This is like knitting, honest to goodness, this is like knitting with my hand spun singles, except that my singles have a teeny tiny bit of twist added to it. Like my singles would be like knitting like this, where you've added just enough twist to make it twist locked, versus this stuff, which is just fiber and it just comes apart. So what I'm really curious about is the integrity with which it will knit. Like, will it be a pain in the butt to knit with, and will it constantly be breaking? And secondly, will it pill when you go to wear it? I don't know. When you run your finger down it and you rub it, it doesn't pill. It doesn't, like, it. This is unwashed. And I think the thing is that this still has a lot of, not a lot, but it still has lanolin in it. You can feel it in your hands and in your fingers. Super interesting. So I have over 800 yards of yarn. So we all know that a sweater will not take more than that. And I thought, what a perfect yarn to put together, but to put a colorwork yoke together with this yarn. And I have been looking for an excuse to knit with this yarn forever, and I just have not found the right project. And so these two will be married, and they will never come apart, because you know what singles are like. Once you wash and finish your sweater, there's no ripping back. And this will be Embers by Tin Can Knits. And I haven't knit one of their patterns in years, and I am so excited. So I love their patterns. They're clear. They're so good. I just love it. Love it, love it, love it. So that is all of that. So that is all of the things that I'm thinking about. I'm hoping that I'll have some cast-ons to talk about next week, some reflections and some things to share with you. I also have some spinning projects that I desperately would like to get onto the wheel, and I'm hoping that I have a little bit of time to do that. So we will see. On the edge of your seats, I am sure, to find out. I wonder if it is similar to the Icelandic singles that Schoolhouse Press sells. I actually think that it probably is, Suzanne. There was another vendor at Knit City that had this. The mill that makes it available is located in Canada. And the other vendor actually had colors. So Brittany had all of the natural colors, and then the other vendor, she had colors as well. And actually there was a pale pink that I was very tempted by, but I just couldn't justify. I went with a budget, and I stuck to my budget. So I didn't purchase it. Before we go into community participation, we won't be able to do all of community participation because I'm back to the time constraints of having to pick up the kids at school. You know, that I can't just teleport there to get them. So we won't be able to get through all of community participation today because the show will go way, way, way too far over. But before we do, Julie, if you're still here, the way that you do bangs, in the middle of the show, we'll do a bangs tutorial. You take your bangs and you twist them in one direction twice. So 1, 2, and then you cut and level it out, make everything even. And then you let them go and you twist them the opposite way. So if you went this way the first time, you have to go this way the next time. And you twist it twice, and then you chop, chop, chop again. And then you take a comb, and that's it. That's how you do your bangs. So twist in one direction, twist in the other direction twice, and then you're good to go. So there's your bangs tutorial, you guys. All right, I will see you on the other side. All right, I know it's just such a cool trick. It is, and it's so easy. And I used to, after I cut them the second time, because you do the first cut and then you do the second cut. So two twists in one direction, 2 twists in the other direction. And then I used to, after I cut in the second direction, I used to then go like this to make it really jagged. But I don't do that anymore because I find that it would, some of the layers of hair underneath would stay long, and then the layers on top would be short, and it was really, really hard to deal with. And so now I just leave it, and it makes curtain bangs. That's what you're doing, is you're twisting it so that the inside hairs are shorter and the outside hairs are longer. We know all about twist in this community. And so you're creating a curtain, and that's how you do it. So yeah, you're welcome. All right, I simplified this. I spent some time over the last couple of weeks and I just simplified this. We needed to get some stuff moved along. We have too many alongs going in the community. Our breeding color study on the Radner is finishing up at the end of this year, so that will drop off. And then Zero to Hero will kind of shift a little bit. Somebody suggested Zero to Hero Spin or Zero to Hero Spun, Zero to Hero Stitches, just because when you look up hashtag Zero to Hero on like Instagram, it's all like sports photos. So we need to come up with something that's like a little bit more that we can use. So whether that's Zero to Hero Spin 2023 or I don't know, we'll figure it out. Or maybe we just stick with hashtag woolen spinning. And then our spindle spun stitches is actually kind of officially over. We were spindling until the eve of the autumnal equinox. I'm hoping that I'll get some time to put some stuff together for next show for that, but we'll see. And then our sock color study is going on throughout the year, and Rebecca is running that. So I hope that you are participating. I took off the natural shades along, luxury along, and a couple of the other ones. They've just kind of run their course. So the threads are still there. The stuff on Slack is still there. We just needed to simplify a little bit. Yes, Christine, you need to get working on it. So our Radnor breeding color study will kind of officially come to an end at the end of December, but lots of people continue working on it after. All right, so this is being run by Rebecca. And if you guys don't know who Rebecca is, Rebby J on Slack and Ravelry, she's also my new other half, and she is running the Wool Circle, and she's also running the Staplers group, Spinning Staples virtual group, where they come together and talk about sort of the foundations of the spinning, stuff that we've talked about for years, and she's bringing her own slant to it and her own je ne sais quoi, you know, her own flair, and going over a lot of that stuff with you guys, which is fantastic. So yeah, that's who Rebecca is. I got distracted because Melanie in the chat said it's similar to, is it Plotolopi? How do you say that again? Brittany told me and I can't remember. It's not, this stuff is not scratchy. So I think that's one of the big differences is, yes, it is similar to that stuff. It's probably exactly the same preparation. It's just that it's not scratchy. So yes, exactly, Melanie, you nailed it. All right, so this is from Rebecca. My red orange is done. So this is our breeding color study. So she's spinning for socks. That's why I threw it into socks. I spun it just like the blue green, which is the other half of our breeding color study. So for those who aren't familiar with our breeding color study, our Radnor study was blue and pinky red. And actually I have the red here, which is the photo of Rebecca's, but I don't have the blue because it's being plied and it's in the other room. So just know that the blue was the other half. So if you're behind on the podcast or you haven't seen the podcast before, this blue is featured in other episodes that make the whole kit that Katrina did for us. I succeeded in making this chain ply a better match for ply twist by going up a whirl, so she went down in speed. So bigger the whirl, the bigger the pulley, the slower the speed to chain ply. These two skeins are pretty close to identical. Toot toot puff puff. Absolutely, you need to toot toot puff puff on that one. With the two colorways side by side, it's clear that the value difference in the blue colorway is much greater. I know I am stuck on that one point of comparison. It occurs to me that the value difference also helps the blue colorway to compete visually with the red orange, just by virtue of its hue could tend to dominate over the blue. Exactly, Rebecca. This is quite a bit brighter. The blue is quite a bit more intense. How do you say it? Plutolopi. So everybody's saying it differently. I love how the show always ends up being, let's teach Rachel how to say things. Let's give Rachel a lesson in pronunciation. You should have seen me in first and second year nursing school trying to say the names of the medication. And it's funny because now I hear certain ones like metoprolol and people are like metoprolol, or they'll say like metprolol, and it's like, no, it's metoprolol. Now I can say it. And these are Rebecca's finished skeins. So there's the blue on the one side and you can see the difference between the two. All right, Spindle Spun Summer. So this kind of ended last week. There are some beautiful things though. Ellen shares, my yardage for the summer was 1,330 yards. I spun 24 grams at 624 yards of merino cashmere. I finished 17 grams of alpaca with 425 grams. And I also started some purple Shetland 9 grams at 112 yards. Overall, I am happy with my singles and my progress. I don't actually get to spin a whole lot in the summer, but I think I did well this summer. I enjoyed all the fibers I spun, and I found I prefer supported spindles over drop spindles. I actually do too. However, I can drop spindle more than support. I'm the opposite. So funny. Ellen's obviously spinning very fine to get that type of yardage as well. It's lace weight. Beautiful. Melanie says it's Icelandic, so therefore impossible to pronounce. Yes. All right. Yeah, see, Christine thought it was something totally different. Plurtiolurpi. Yeah, I know the L-O-P-I is low P, but this is from Ange. Always beautiful photos from Ange. Let me move my head out of the way so that you guys can see that spindle there. You might be able to tell how much I'm loving the Allen Berry spindle that I've only had for a couple of days, and it's almost full. It's beautiful. I love that photo. And then this is just general makes and shares. So this is kind of some of our Zero to Hero, some of our other stuff, things that people are excited about. This is from Caitlin. This summer, what has been my first experience working with raw fleece, 2 pounds of Jacob, arrived on my doorstep back in July. Somehow a month later, I have managed to wash, card, and spin it all without a major disaster. That's amazing, Caitlin. Well done. Though I would do a few things differently in retrospect, I loved the process and will definitely be working with raw fleece again. Taking over the kitchen table during sorting and washing, the best of the best became super squishy 2-ply for a colorwork sweater. Who needs to dye with colors like these? I totally agree. Slightly coarser portions went into 3-ply skeins, possibly for socks. The luster in the white skeins was a super pleasant surprise. Beautiful, Caitlin, beautiful. Actually, it's funny, Melanie, she says beautiful country and wonderful people. She's talking about Iceland. We're still talking about that. That is one place I desperately want to go. There's a couple of places on my list. That is one of them. This is from Sue. I feel just a little bit sad today, so I spun the last of the singles from my rescue Corriedale sheep spin. It's been an interesting creative exercise and very satisfied to turn carpet wool into a lovely bouncy yarn. Amen. And I love the vest it's becoming. I can't wait to see that, Sue. You're a beautiful knitter, so it'd be great to see that finished. And look at all those bobbins. So good. All right, this is from Laura. This is just really fun. This is a different kind of Zero to Hero. I've had my hand spun yarn in various dark storages, and I've lost track of what I've spun and forgot to use my yarns. Yes. My son wanted to quit his aquarium hobby, and we gave his last fish away and emptied the aquarium. I instantly got an idea what to do with it, and so today I finished cleaning the pool and finished almost all of the 60 liters with hands and filled almost all of the 60 liters with hand spun yarn. Now I have all of it in the middle of our living room bookcase. How cool is that? So much fun. That's like what you know, those glass vases that you can get that are like the massive ones from IKEA that are like just so enormous. What would you ever do with them? That's what I fill my hand spun with. I fill my hand spun in those. That didn't make any sense. You don't put a vase in hand spun yarn. I put the yarn in the vase. This is from Laura as well. My next Zero to Hero is almost done. Only the knitting is left. I spun 2 tops of Malabrigo Noob in, I think it's the Chameleon colorway, and I spun the first one fractal. I wanted to make the other skeins some sort of gradient. So I separated the colors and spun 2 singles with some same color order. The colorway was not really as it is in the manufacturer's pictures, and I was quite disappointed when I received the tops, but surprisingly I really fell in love with the yarns. And this obviously, you guys probably know this pattern. It's the Night Shift by Andrea Mowry, and she's been knitting. Incredible. From fish to squish. Yes, I love that. Laura, with your aquariums, from fish to squish. This is from Megan. This is beautiful. This is her first hand spun project. She's happy with her weekender light, and now she just needs some chilly weather to enjoy wearing it. Beautiful. Really nicely done. This is where the barber pulled yarns speak to me. I see stuff like this and I'm like, yes. And then I see it in this and I'm like, no. So you really have to knit with them to know what your yarns are going to do for real. Yeah, beautiful. This is from Jackie. I've made a start on the knitting stage of my first Zero to Hero. I spun the wool at the start of the year, 2 months after my first spinning lesson. The white is some Corriedale that I bought as fleece and washed and carded. I'm always amazed at what people do when they first start spinning. It's almost like the further along you get in your spinning, it's almost like you get kind of paralyzed by what you don't know. Like, you don't know, and you're like, I can't go there, I can't do that. But when you're new, it's like, I can wash a fleece, I can card it, I can spin it. It's like you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know the mammoth project that you're taking on, so you just do it. It's just awesome. I love it. And then the teal is a range of commercial tops that she bought and blended to make slightly heathered yarn. Both are 2-ply and fingering light sport range. And she's knitting the fingering weight concurrent by Carolyn Bloom. I spun the wool with this pattern in mind, but also think it's a great, it'll look great as a solid and a fractal or gradient yarn. Yeah, you could do anything. I'm finding that I prefer knitting with the lower twist teal, but I'm encouraged to know that my spinning has improved a lot since I finished these skeins. That's awesome. Yeah, right, Rebecca? She says, way to set the bar high, Megan. Gorgeous, Megan. Yes, I totally agree. Oh, my mouse is jumping back and forth. So you guys will remember some of these photos and you'll probably actually recognize them, but this is from Caitlin, different Caitlin from our earlier Caitlin. I never would have guessed that I ended up doing a Zero to Hero project in a single year, but here we are. Back in February, I challenged myself to spin on my spindles for 15 minutes a day for 100 days. I knew I eventually wanted to spin through 3 braids in my stash, but I didn't have a clue how long that would take. I managed to finish the 6 ounces in the first 70 days and then another 6 ounces after that. I ended up with something like 800 yards of sport weight. Last weekend I cast on for the Reina shawl, and I know I may not have enough yarn, but I think I will just cast off early if I run out, maybe. I'm excited that I can finally knit with this yarn. It's so satisfying. The knit is flying by so much faster than the spinning did, so I am already in section 4 of 6. It's beautiful, Caitlin. I love this. I'm discovering a lot by going straight from spinning my yarn to knitting with it. For example, I thought I was spinning for a more uniform color, but clearly the fiber needed to be blended a lot more because my 2 yarns are both coming out striped. Yes, that will happen. And also the density came out thicker than I expected, and I might have aimed for a loftier prep at the beginning if I'd realized. But so far I'm really happy with both yarns, and I know I will wear the shawl a lot anyways, even if it wasn't what I envisioned from the beginning. It's beautiful, Caitlin. I think you're doing a great job, and don't be too hard on yourself because that's just lovely. And this is how we learn. Rebecca said in the last wool circle that you don't know about your yarn until you learn about your fabric, something along those lines. And that really resonated because she's absolutely right. We can't really make any assumptions about our yarns until we make fabric, whether that's woven or knit or crochet or otherwise. This is from Sarah. This actually isn't knitting or spinning or weaving. This is quilting, but I know we've got a lot of sewers in our community, and she is new to sewing and quilting and just finished her first quilt top. It's made out of fabric I collected over the last year in a random assortment. Probably going to add a border. Anybody have suggestions for beginning patterns? I'm feeling the quilting bug. Sarah is also, I think she's newly married or engaged. Anyways, lots going on in her life. Lots of excitement. She's a lovely human. So thank you so much, you guys, for sharing all that you do. It means a lot, and it's my absolute pleasure to be able to keep sharing it with you here. I was going to share one last thing before we go. It is weaving related, but I thought that you guys would appreciate it. Because actually by next week, by Tuesday, this won't exist anymore. So I thought I would share it with you guys. So this is, I'm almost embarrassed to say. This is the Hexie Love. It's a crocheted pattern on Ravelry. I don't know if it's still available, but this is a astronomically big piece of fabric that I started to crochet when I was pregnant with James. So James just turned 10, so this is about 11 years old-ish, because I started working on it before I knew I was actually pregnant, because I just really liked it and I wanted to make it. This is Barocco Vintage, and as I was seaming it and sewing it and putting it all together, I was noticing that as I was working on it, and I'll just move it around while I'm talking, that my Hexies that I had worked on at the beginning were coming unraveled. So there's a whole bunch of them that are like this that maybe you can't see because I'm moving this around. But they were coming unraveled. And as I was making more and more and more, they were unraveling. Other places were unraveling. And I was really feeling frustrated. And the pattern tells you to sew in your ends as you go. And I remember talking about this on the podcast. And I remember saying, like, what do I do with this? Because it's unraveling and I don't know what to do. And I'm not a crocheter, but like I'm having to tie knots because everything's coming unraveled. And a few people said that you can get, because Barocco Vintage it's basically a superwash yarn, basically. It's got acrylic in it and some wool. I think it's superwash wool. Anyways, it's a cheap yarn. It's great for baby knits. It's great for throwing in the washing machine. Anyhow, this is also incredible. It's quite heavy. So I have about 11 skeins of yarn. I have a total of 3,100 meters of yarn. All of the colors, there's grapefruit, aqua, citrus, that's the yellow, mushroom is this color, and this is cracked pepper. And so very primary, red, yellow, and blue, with these other two colors kind of thrown in. Not colors that I would choose now. But it's taking up space and it's taking up room, and I would like to start working through some of this old stuff that I have. So long story short, Felicia had warped up at Knit City. Felicia of Sweet Georgia Yarns had warped up her baby wolf, and she had put a double weave blanket on it for people to just give it a try. Weave a little bit, see what it felt like. And so I sat there for a few minutes. I've woven on her baby wolf before. I've woven double weave before, but Kelly was asking us some questions, and it was fun to just sit down and throw the shuttle. And then I got thinking later, and I was talking to Felicia on Sunday morning, maybe I should pull this out, because all of these shorter ends and shorter bits I can use as weft. It might end up with a lot of ends, but at least it'll use up the yarn, and I can weave the ends in. And maybe I should just kind of weave through it and see if I can just make some double weave blankets. And I probably have enough to make 3 or 4, and so on and so forth. So we were just kind of spitballing some ideas. Well, I started doing the math yesterday, and I actually can only make 2 blankets, which tells you 2 things. Number 1, I don't have as much yarn as I thought I did. I've only got 300 meters. And number 2, weaving takes a lot of yarn. So 2 lap-sized blankets, pretty big. They'll be 50 inches by 60 inches, with 10 colors across. So it'll be 5 and 5. It makes 2 blankets, 1 for each kid. So I have skeins still. That's how much of this yarn I have. I still have skeins, and I've been slowly balling them up, and I've wound 2 of the chains out of 5 that I need, and I'm hoping to get that on the loom relatively quickly, and I'll start to unravel this and to make bobbins and start to weave through it, and then it'll get some of this yarn out of my stash, and the kids can use their blankets, they can enjoy them. There won't be kind of anything associated with them, like in terms of guilt of this yarn being thrown out or not being used or whatever. And I can just enjoy, putting this yarn to use. And what'll be really neat is that there will be, on on the blanket, there will be places where like that solid square of the color will come through, and then you'll get the other squares where you get the mixing of the two colors where they cross, which I think will actually be really beautiful, and it'll take the that primary feeling out of the yarn a little bit. So yeah, total remix. Do it totally differently. So I'll keep you guys posted, and that will probably be an upcoming Welford Weaves episode, kind of going through that process and showing you guys a little bit about that, because I can only do one warp chain, like one color block per on my warping board, because they're so thick, because it's a worsted weight. So it's going to be set at 8 ends per inch, 8 ends per inch, and it'll be 50 inches. What was it again? Each one is going to be 5-inch blocks. So I'll tell you guys all about that, and we'll do an episode of Welford Weaves, so that I can keep it off of the podcast. So yeah, upcycling, just reusing it, trying to use it up. I'm not going to finish the blanket. It's too heavy and it's not structurally sound. The kids will wreck it. Let's turn it into something else. So, all right, I have to go get the kids. Wonderful to see everybody. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here. I will see you guys next week, same time, same place. And until then, have a wonderful week of crafty making and being multi-craftual and making all the things. And I hope you get some time at your wheels or your spindles. I'll talk to you then. Bye, guys.